Debut of a hockey roundup show that will allow us to talk about all things hockey, high school, college, and the pros. A little bit later in the show, Tom Kelly sits down with former Bruin Rick Middleton. But first, the field for the Massachusetts High School Hockey Super 8 tournament has been announced by the MIAA, and we have the matchups for you. Seeded number 1 is Springfield Cathedral, who is 20-0-2 with 61 commits. Number 2 is four-time defending champ Malden Catholic, followed by the 3 seed Austin Prep. BC High is number 4, the 5 seed is St. John's Prep, and the 6 seed is Central Catholic. The final 2 teams will be decided by 2 play-in games. Franklin is number 7 and will play number 10 Zavarian for the right to face Malden Catholic, while 8th seeded Burlington and 9th seeded Woburn play for the 3rd time this year, with the winner moving on to face Springfield Cathedral. So it looks like Hingham and Arlington Catholic are on the outside looking in. The tournament starts Tuesday with the play-in games at Chelmsford Forum, 5 and 7, which can be seen on My Hockey Live. The field for Division 1, 2, and 3 are still being worked on, as well as the girls' tournaments. So guys, I see that the chairman of the Super 8 Selection Committee has made it out to the set, Mike Nanatowich from Hudson. Let's hear what he says with Tom and Joe. Guys?
Thanks, Mike. Now I'm joined here at the desk by Tom Kelly and a special guest of ours, Mike Nanatowich. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
I appreciate being here.
Right.
So we're here to talk about the Super 8 tournament because today, obviously, the big drawing, seeds coming out. We're going to find out who's going to be in the tournament. And you're a part of that. You run the meeting. Tell us about the selecting process. What do you think is the hardest process in putting teams in seeding order?
Well, there's so much research that gets involved with it. There are 9 voting members. I'm not a voting member. I just simply keep everything in sequence. There's a process that we actually run through, but the 9 voting members are the ones that really do a lot of the work that's involved. They have to look at strength of schedule, they have to look at common opponents, and everything else prior to going in the meeting. Once we're in the meeting, we make a list. It's called a watch list, and everybody gets to nominate a team. And then all the coaches will get up and talk to, the committee, the voting members, of why they think they should be on the selection or why they should be a 1A consideration. After that, then we take that big 9 list and the voting members then vote to keep them on, to consider them. Once that is done, we may have a list of 14 or 15 teams. Once that's done, we now begin the process of seeding them correctly. So we'll say, okay, who wants to be the number 1 seed? So I'll run a certain list that I have in front of me, and we'll run through that. And what we do is we ask, a voting member like Mark Leonard, who represents Division 2. We'll ask Mark, and he'll say something like Springfield Cathedral. And then we'll go all the way around, and we'll get Springfield Cathedral up there, and maybe it's Malden Catholic too. Someone nominated Malden Catholic. And then what we say, okay, for the number 1 seed, the voting members now have to decide who gets the number 1 seed. And now we run again around the voting members, maybe in a slightly different order, and they'll put little marks, and it's always a 5-4 vote. It can't be any tiebreaker because there's only 9 people in there. And let's say, Springfield Cathedral gets 6 votes and Malden Catholic gets 3. Springfield Cathedral gets the number 1. Then we begin the process again. So for the 2nd seed, someone may nominate Malden Catholic, and someone may nominate like Austin Prep or something like that. Then we run through that process again. If in fact only 1 team gets there, then we just do a show of hands to vote to make sure it's official, so we can write down a recorded 9-0 vote or something like that. And that's basically the way the process goes. We seed them 1 through 12. Every once in a while, we may have 3 teams get on there, and then we got to vote to eliminate one of those teams, and then you have to re-vote, and then that can come back. So it's pretty much a repetitious process that we actually run through. And sometimes we may stop and we may have discussions. Common opponents when you're looking at different teams. Some board members, voting members would have the situation where they were common opponents. You guys play each other. What was your record? How about in league as compared to out of league? We look at strength of schedule, all those different things. So all of those things play into finally coming up with the 12. Those 12 then go to the MIAA, and the MIAA makes the final decision on where everybody's going to fit. They can adjust it. They can change it around as they see fit. That's beyond what the coaches do. Coaches just put the best 12 teams they think up, and we let the MIA then handle it after that.
All right, so the Super 8 tournament is obviously a very prestigious tournament. You've got a lot of basically the elite teams of Massachusetts in there. but they're mostly private schools. Is there a gap between private and public schools in these meetings and these proceedings when you're choosing the teams?
Basically, you look at MC and stuff like that, and John and what he's done there since he's been there. I think it's 4 in a row for them. Or
it's
3 in a row.
crazy.
Yeah, something like that. Very, very good. Great coaching staff and everything else. John and Phil do a great job, with their teams. It's been there is that gap there, but you can look back to say Reading High School winning a couple years back, and stuff like that. Every once in a while, those public schools can creep up. I think the public schools can skate with them. I think it really comes down to depth. I think Catholic schools definitely have they can go 3, maybe 4 deep. They can play 6 defensemen. Well, I got some of those publics that can go 3, and play 5 defensemen and stuff like that. I really think depth plays a lot into it. I think on both sides, whether it's the Catholics versus the public side of the whole thing, I think there's a lot of talent on the public side as well as a lot of talent on the Catholic side. I just think there's a little bit more depth that takes place overall. I think some of the top guys in public, at Burlington, I know Bobby's won. He won 2 in a row. In the Division I, and that type of stuff. Very, very talented teams. I think it really comes down to the depth in their schedule. They play each other a ton. Every once in a while they play that public school and they may come up and bite them, or you get a 3-2 game. Publics get up to play those guys. There's no doubt about that. But there's definitely that gap, and I think that gap might be depth.
Now, you were talking about the process of seedings, how it's basically a vote, and you were looking at qualifications of like strength of schedule, anything like that. What's the biggest qualification you think voters take a look at when picking these teams?
I think it's definitely strength of schedule, and strength of league is in there as well. When those coaches get up to talk about why they should be considered, once we get, I know, we started off, just to give you an example, John got up there for Malden Catholic, and he talked very, very briefly. He talked, strength of schedule. They really talk about their big wins. They talk about, who they played outside the conference every once in a while. There's what they call exclusionatory games. I'm not going to get into that. That's a MIA type of thing. But they go away. They go down to New Jersey to play one of the best teams in the country. Del Barton down there in New Jersey and stuff like that. So a lot of times it's about their strength of schedule. I think a lot. It's about the depth on their team. It's about years that they've proven themselves, over time in the tournament, and stuff like that. BC High's always been in there and Flash and, those type of stuff. They do a great job. So I really think, one of the things that I always look at is strength of schedule. I think that's very, very important when you look at who they play outside their league. Your league is your league, and some people get locked into that. I know like Algonquin Regional, they're locked into the league. I'm sure they'd love to play outside a little bit more. You're a big Franklin fan, and that type of stuff. Franklin, has to play in their league, and, we were talking about that earlier. They have to play in their league. But, boy, did they do a good job at Springfield Cathedral playing outside. That's why, their strength of schedule is important. I think their strength of schedule non-league was like a ranking of 8, which is very, very good for them,
Yes.
While in league, strength of schedule was not as good because of the league that they play in. But you got to take those things out, I think. And I think as coaches, we take those things out.
Does it also depend on like scores? Like say we have BC High and Malden Cathedral. Malden Catholic, excuse me. Malden Catholic 4-0 on BC High. Does that come into effect depending on how close or how far?
Well, you could look at. I know one of the teams that was considered, and I don't remember at the top of my head everything because I'm so involved in the process more or less and making sure everybody stays on page and make sure we follow the process every single time. I know like Central Catholic. You can take Central Catholic. They played Springfield Cathedral twice. Whether they're going to be there or not in the event, or they are there, and where they're going to fit into the whole thing, I don't know exactly, out of the whole thing. But you got to look at they played Springfield, they lost like 10-0, and then 10-1, and then they got beat again. Strength of schedule. I mean, you go out and you play those guys. Everybody has a bad day. Everybody, doesn't. Things happen. People are sick. You have the flu. You don't make excuses on those things, but those things do play into it. I think. I don't know that guys. I know if I was a voting member, I would not look at that more or less. I mean, those things just happen. You have bad games.
So I want to talk about this year's Super 8. Now, I attend Franklin High School, and I recognize we had a tremendous year in hockey. They finished 16-2-3, which is phenomenal, but I never thought they would make the Super 8 because they play in the Hockomock League. Listen, BC High plays teams like, Austin Prep and all those guys, and we're playing Taunton, and we're playing Stoughton, and we're playing Mansfield, and we're playing Foxborough, and we're playing KP. All those teams are just so bad. I mean, KP we beat 10-0. Mansfield we beat 6-1. Foxborough I believe was 11-1. Stoughton was 8-0. So really, I don't see why Franklin would get a consideration. They are in a play-in game against Severian. Can you please explain to me how Franklin got consideration in the first place here?
I think that's their non-league strength of schedule. Again, Coach was there. Coach talked. Coach Blaine talked a little bit about the reasons why they were and stuff like that. And he talked about like their league itself, and he talked about like I know we don't play. We're kind of like locked into our certain spot. But I think their non-league schedule and what they've proven in their non-league schedule. I mean, they start the year against Springfield Cathedral, 3-3 game. I mean, obviously I didn't see it. You probably saw it.
I did.
It was a great hockey game.
It was pretty awesome, I have to admit.
Yeah. Those type of things. A lot of times there's nothing you can do about your league. And I think in the back of voting members' minds, and again, I can't say that this is exactly what they think about, but if I was a voting member on that thing, I would, look at, okay, their league is their league. Were they successful in their league? Yes, they were. I think they were 10-0 in their league.
Yes, they were.
Okay. Now you got to look at their non-league games. And you're going to say, what did they do in their did they challenge themselves? Yes, Franklin did challenge themselves and did play up when they had every opportunity possible. I mean, I know at Hudson we're just a small Division III school out of the whole thing, but I go out and try to play the best schedule possible. When we won the state title in 2012, I was out looking. I was begging guys to go play D1 because I wanted to challenge my guys.
Yeah.
So I knew going in the tournament that we would be tournament ready, that we'd know how to play in hard games, and that type of stuff. And I think Coach down in Franklin did that. I think he challenged themselves, and I think that was recognized by the voting members of the Coaches Association.
Well, God help us.
So we've talked about the tournament, Super 8 tournament, definitely a highlight with Boston high schools. Do you feel that the Super 8 is improving all throughout the years? What's your opinion on the tournament's progression?
The past couple of years, knowing all those guys and being a member of the Coaches Association, being a board member, being the first vice president of the whole thing, it's lots of fun. It's lots of fun to see those guys play. So every once in a while, I'll run out, I'll talk to those guys and stuff like that. But I think the tournament is absolutely outstanding. I mean, I just think the level of hockey and to see how talented those kids are, because everything's on junior. Everything's junior. You know what? There's some pretty talented kids at the public level. There's some pretty talented kids playing for the school, and you gotta. I have a lot of respect for those kids that hang around and play for the high school and make memories.
All right. Well, thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Mike
Thank you so much, Mike.
Nanatowich and Tom Kelly, along with Joe Brayman. Stay tuned. We're going to go to break. We'll be right back with more Kids Talk Hockey.
My Hockey Live is the Northeast area's #1 website for high school hockey, featuring live video streams of games and on-demand replays. Not only does it capture the action of one of the most exciting winter sports, it delivers a valuable, affluent, educated, and passionate audience.
And now finally Concord Carlisle gets possession, but they can't clear. Lewis over in the high slot, a wrist shot to save, and Lewis on the rebound scores.
Families support local high school teams, and hockey families are 25% more likely to have a household income of over $100,000. Equally split between males and females, they watch hockey regularly and support their local teams. Thousands of viewers have already checked out the live and on-demand webcast of myhockeylive.com. Kids love to see themselves on video, and the coaches always review the games. Most viewers of these games watch from start to finish, and My Hockey Live gives supporters a one-stop website with scores, schedules, and a library of previously streamed games. Now, you can take advantage of this great audience of thousands of supporters of one of the Northeast's most popular winter sports by signing up to be a sponsor today. Sponsorships start at a rate that fits any business's budget, and your message will become part of the in-game webcast. Anyone watching at any time will know that you support your community and their hockey teams. There are few better supporters of any sport than hockey fans and parents of hockey players, and they are the most loyal, affluent, educated, and passionate fans about their game. Now, you can reach this group of supporters directly by joining the sponsorship group at myhockeylive.com. Contact MHL's Director of Sales and Sponsorships, Jane Cornyn, at 781-243-1263. Her email, jcornyn@bbigcommunications.com. My Hockey Live is your hockey now.
Hey everyone, I'm Tom Kelly for Kids Talk Hockey, and I'm very honored to be joined by Boston Bruins alum Rick Middleton, better known around Boston as Nifty. Rick, thanks so much for being here today.
My pleasure, Tom.
All right, you mind if we jump right into this?
Absolutely.
All right,
See
let's
you're
go.
ready. You're writing them all
All
down.
right, so I want you to describe how you got started in the game of hockey. What really?
Well, I'm from Toronto, Canada, and I was born in 1953, so you can do the math. But my father, in those days when the winters were cold enough, froze a rink in the backyard.
Nice.
We didn't get 7 feet of snow in those days, but we got a lot of snow in Toronto. But I was about 4 years old. I think it was probably about 1957. And all the older kids in the neighborhood would come down and skate with on the ice and take me out there so they could come out. And so that's how I learned to skate.
Oh,
they
nice.
tell me that it was the older kids just wanting to skate on our little backyard rink, and it was a small one.
That must have been awesome.
It was, but it really didn't get me into hockey. What it was, my baseball coach, as I was playing softball actually, and he, from what they tell me, talked my dad into taking me out to play hockey because he was a hockey coach also. Yeah. So if it wasn't for playing softball, I probably never would have played hockey.
Wow, how do you like that?
I know. Weird.
So I want to talk about the new rule changes following the 04-05 lockout. You know, those tacky little holding hooky calls, the axing of the two-line pass. They seem to benefit the offensively gifted player like you were back in the 70s and 80s. So my question to you is, would you thrive now more because of those rule changes, do you think?
Well, you know, some people think they would. Personally, the players can skate so well today, and the defensemen especially. Because back in the day when I played, you could, not all defensemen, but some defensemen had trouble turning one way or the other, or they were big guys, so they weren't really fleet of foot. Yeah. And I could, trick them once in a while and stick the puck between
once
their
in a
legs.
while. How about all the time?
And which would get them mad, but. But today, the game is so fast, there's no slowing it down. There's no going over the blue line and being able to slow the play down so that, their speed is jeopardized and then they don't know whether to come at you. There's a lot of tricks you could use in the old days. Today, because of the back checking is so hard, you really just got to go to the net and try to make your best move and get your best shot off. So today, it would have been different for me. I couldn't have played the same game. So
I want to talk about another pressing issue in the game today. It's concussions. There's been a lot of careers that have been tragically cut short, like Mark Savard, Eric Lindros, Pat LaFontaine, just to name a few. Even Paul Correa had to end his career because of post-concussion issues. So do you think the NHL is doing enough to prevent these things from happening?
It's hard to say what needs to be done. I mean, the equipment has gotten better, bigger, stronger, harder, I'm told. Was that good for the team? Was that good for the players? Or did it make the players more like warriors, where if you do get hit, whether it's on purpose or by accident, in the head area, you're getting hit harder by these equipment pieces, where, back in our day, a lot of it was just cloth with a cap. And, if you got hit in the head, it was usually on purpose, because if you didn't have a helmet on and you hit somebody else without a helmet, they could hit you back. So honestly, in our day, I don't remember ever getting hit on top of the head with anything. Sure in the face or, and definitely in other areas. But outside of a few freak accidents like Teddy Green, the stick fight, and you didn't hear about it a lot when people didn't have helmets on. But I think it just shows you that if you make them into warriors and you put all this equipment on them, it doesn't necessarily make them safer, it makes them more deadly.
So I want to talk to you about, in the early 70s when you were first coming up, there was this other professional hockey league by the name of the World Hockey Association, or the WHA. Right. So did you ever consider going to the WHA instead of the NHL?
For about 6 minutes.
For about 6 minutes?
When I got drafted by the WHA. But what happened was, in those days, and it was great, salaries in the NHL started to go up because players had a bargaining chip now. If they got drafted by the WHA and drafted in the NHL, they could use the WHA, especially if you were drafted in a higher round, or you got an offer from them for a certain amount of money. You go back to the NHL and say, hey, I can get this over here. If you want me, you got to give me this, especially the higher draft picks. And it was a bargaining chip. But then, when they merged in '79 and handed a monopoly back to the NHL owners, there goes the bargaining chip, and salaries actually leveled off or started dipping again. And we got nothing for it, thanks to the head of our union.
Thanks,
Alan
a lot.
Eagleson. Thanks, Al. Thanks for that one again.
So
back in the early 80s, you had a great chemistry with Barry Peterson. You guys were an offensive force out there. So just tell me about the chemistry both on and off the ice.
Well, Barry came, young guy, highly touted. I believe, and I think it was '83, but the years all blend together. But the one thing I remember that they put us together to play, and Barry was a right-handed shot, and me being a right winger, we didn't know whether he'd be able to get the puck to me. Making the pass on the backhand all the time, it's a very difficult pass to make, especially at full speed. Whether I would necessarily get the puck when I wanted it or at the right time. But Barry was such a professional and so good at either the backhand pass or turning on the forehand and making it, that we just sort of got this chemistry where he kind of always knew where I was. And then the more we played together, he knew when to get me the puck. So I would be able to look up and have enough time before I hit the blue line in the other defense to be able to make a move or decide what I was going to do. And whether it was down low in the zone, in the corners or whatever, I look at some of the old tapes and we did a lot of things with just blindly knowing where each other was.
Oh, yeah.
And then the addition of a Mike Kruzelinski, another young, great, offensive-minded left winger to our line was and a big kid too, and could handle himself out there. I thought we really had it going there. Unfortunately, they traded Mike and that was the end of that threesome. And then Barry and I kept going with Dave Reed and some other guys. But and then they ended up trading Barry for Cam. So nothing lasts forever in sports, but we were fortunate to have those memorable years. That Cam Neely guy.
Yeah, who was that? Who was that?
He did okay for himself.
He's all right.
Yeah.
50 and 30. Yeah. So in the late 70s, you played during the Lunch Pail AC era, which is the Don Cherry. That's what it's called.
That's what they call us.
So can you just describe his coaching style to me? And what did he do to you guys after a tough loss? What was that locker room like?
Well, if it was a tough loss and we played well but lost, he wasn't too bad. It was when he felt that we weren't working hard enough or whatever reason, he just needed to shake us up. There'd be a lot of overs and backs and ups and downs the ice, but Don was a player's coach. He really treated us pretty fairly, and he used to like to come out and have a beer with us if we won, and we won a lot.
Pretty
so
awesome.
He was out with us a lot. But every once in a while, he'd have to act like coach, and he'd stick it to us once in a while when we weren't performing the right way. But for the most part, he was one of the guys.
So after your playing career, you got involved in the Paralympics and sled hockey. What kind of drew you to it, and how important really is it to give back to the community?
Well, I was lucky that a friend of mine was a disabled skier on the U.S. disabled ski team, also a part-time sled hockey player, who had just heard that the U.S. national team needed a coach. Their coach had quit in the World Championships in 2000. The Paralympics were coming to Salt Lake City in 2002. They were going to be the host team, and they didn't have a coach. Plus, they'd only ever won one game in their history. The only reason they were even in it because they were the host team. Yeah. So he said, do you know anything about sled hockey? I went, oh, yeah, sure. I'd never seen it. He said, would you be interested in becoming a coach of the national team? I said, yeah. I mean, I was thinking, I'll never make it to the Olympics. This is the next best thing. Hockey's hockey. Yeah. I'll take a shot at it if they want me. And it turned out that they ended up hiring me for the job. And lo and behold, 7 months later, we won the gold medal in Salt Lake City. As the last seed, the sixth seed out of 6 teams.
Upset, Cinderella story, gotta love it.
It really was the second miracle on ice, trust me. Yeah.
And was that experience, being able to coach those guys, rewarding for you?
Well, it was, because I'd never really been around disabled people before. I learned a lot of, disabled is the wrong term. The abilities that all these guys had was amazing. I mean, I thought I'd have to open doors for them or help them carry stuff, and it was really the opposite. They were holding doors. They had cars that were made for disabled people to hop in and take off in. I mean, they could go down the stairs in their wheelchairs. I mean, these are big, strong guys. And, their hockey ability was all different levels, but I had some really great hockey players on my team, and 2 of them were from Massachusetts, Joe Howard and Kip St. Germain, and both of them are in the Massachusetts Hockey Hall of Fame today.
Awesome.
And Joe, at one time, had the most gold medals of any person in the world He won it in 2002 and 2010. So until they won it in Sochi this year, he was the only guy with 2 gold medals in the world.
All right, Rick, unfortunately, we're
Out of time.
We're a little
It goes
tight
fast,
on
doesn't
time,
it?
but I want to thank you for doing this today.
My pleasure.
Been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Some of the responsibility, that's his job.
Yeah, definitely.
So-
And what has Claude Julien had to coach this year? Like, you had Seth Griffith on the first line in the first part of the year. And then you had,
He had some good games.
yeah, that little goal
He
against
did.
New Jersey was nice. But then, and who they had recently, his name is escaping me. Who has been playing on the first line?
Well,
with
the
Craig
kid from
Middleton?
the European kid's doing
Oh,
great.
Pasternak,
Yeah.
rookie from Sweden, still getting used to the North American game. So,
How do you
That's
really,
been-
how do you
that's
really feel,
Passion
Tom?
right there. That is passion.
so
Tom.
Shirelli has a lot of questions to answer.
Now, we talk about a lot of the problems the Bruins have, but they're still in the playoff hunt. They have that
They
final
are.
wild card spot. They moved to 67 points. They're 3 ahead of the Florida Panthers and 6 ahead of the Philadelphia Flyers. They'd be playing the Canadiens. If it were to end today, it would be the Canadiens and the Bruins.
Oh, that's a good
in
draw.
the first round, which is a.
Oh, yeah.
As,
Can't wait.
If you didn't realize that was sarcasm. So they're still in that second wild card spot, but it's not for sure yet. What do they need to do to stay in that wild card spot and hopefully stay in the playoffs?
Well, I'd say go out and get a goal scorer. Or maybe even because another problem with the Bruins has been their blue line. I mean, if you saw the first goal against the Calgary, that was given up against the Calgary Flames, Dougie Hamilton just blew that play. That coverage was weak. He was beaten by a young, inexperienced forward. That Calgary forward his name escapes me right now, but he has to have that.
Johnny Gaudreau?
Yeah. Oh.
The
That
one
was
who
Johnny
would like
Gaudreau? That was Johnny
I'm
Hockey?
not
Who
sure,
would
I'm
like-
just saying
The one
he's-
who would be like to known as Johnny Hockey.
Johnny
Hockey.
Hockey, yes. If that was Johnny Hockey, I understand. But
I didn't see the game. I'm not saying it was Johnny Hockey.
So
He's a heck of a player, though.
So you're
I'd
saying
say-
basically deadline moves.
deadline moves if you want to stay in, but I don't
Sometimes
see,
that's easier said than done, Tom.
Yeah, but I would wait till the off season to make all these big moves too. You know?
Well, I mean, a lot of NHL teams are known for trying to do something at the deadline that's going to make the difference in going a long way. But a lot of those teams are, ahead of the Bruins now, and they're looking at it. Hey, what do we need to win the cup, not just make the playoffs?
The Bruins aren't winning the cup at all this year.
It's going to be tough. It's
They're-
going to be tough. I mean, it was a lot of things happening at once this year. Guys are getting a little older. The injury bugs have hit. I love Tuukka as a goalie,
Yeah.
but he needs a little, not 2 weeks off, but he needs some support
Yeah.
and some rest, and
Every time
a
they
game
try to
here and
rest
there.
him.
So yeah,
Every time they try to rest him, the goalie gets pulled and he has to come in and clean up the garbage. So it's just been one massive confusion this year for the Boston
I
Bruins.
mean, they've got the goalie. He's great. I think he's top 4,
Oh,
5,
yeah.
6 in the
Tuukka
league.
Rask?
And
Oh,
yeah, he's a warrior, and he's going to be there. You're going to build a team around him for the next 10 years. But they've got to, whether you have to make decisions now or whether you become, the classic, are we a buyer or a seller at this
Yeah.
point? Do we give up and not, wink, wink? You're never going to tell the fans that, but do we realize, as you just said, we're not going to win this thing this year, so let's solidify some of the future, and let's maybe one or two of the guys get, not a guy like Bergeron or those guys, but maybe somebody ends up on a team that goes deeper into the playoffs, and they're able to get something for the future.
I don't know if you saw that shootout, the highlights of the shootout against the Edmonton Oilers, but rest assured
It's
the
still
Bruins-
going on, isn't it?
Yeah, they're in the 50th round.
Yeah.
So it's definitely been, as you said, a very confusing season. You don't have the players. You've been hurt with injuries, and you want to talk about injuries. David Krejci injury, lower body injury, could not come at a worse time. And from what I'm seeing, I don't think the Bruins have any player that can fill the role that Krejci's been doing, because he's been one of the
second line center.
Yeah, and he's been one of the best players. You put him with Bergeron and Chara, you have your team right there. But going back to the trade deadline, you were talking about being buyers or sellers. Would it be better to be buyers, or would it be better to be sellers? Because they're at the bottom of the playoffs. They still would like to make the playoffs, but you also got to think about the future.
That's the question I've been wrestling with for the past week now. Are they good? Should they be buyers? Should they get players? They obviously need goal scoring and defensive depth, but they can't really. They're not a Stanley Cup team right now. That's what you do at the deadline to get better. You give yourself the most opportunity to win the cup with your moves. I'd say right now, wait till the offseason and kind of blow the team up. I'd say Joe Haggerty came out with an article a couple weeks ago saying maybe you'd get rid of Chara, and that looks pretty rational to me because if you've seen how he's tailed off, how he looks his age, that's not a bad idea.
There aren't a lot of teams that are going to make a move for Big Z because of the contract situation and his age. I mean, that's a big investment at a stage in his 37, right? I mean, and he's been I use the word warrior. He is a warrior.
Yeah.
He's had a terrific career. He's done everything. He plays all those minutes or those hours of ice time every game, and he's been great. He's been a great leader for the Bruins, and you hate to see a career come down at the end and have terrible ends of the seasons like this looks like it could happen. But in terms of, there's more to it than just the fans, and those guys are the upper management of the Bruins now sits around in a room and we're talking. It's on the table whether we're talking about buyer or seller. In the classic sense of it, we read the sports pages and we say, if we just had this pitcher in September, if we just had this wide receiver or this goalie, we're going to get there and we're going to go deep. But for these guys, it's a question of, do we make the playoffs? How many home games do we get? Because that's bodies in the building and that's more money, more revenue for the owners. And they've got to think, well, if we end up with Montreal, the most will really, we can't say this, but maybe we're only going to get 2 home games. So is it worth spending a lot of money to get somebody, leveraging some of the future talent-wise on the ice, and not getting the bang for the buck out of it and only getting 2 home dates where people are already throwing the towel in because it's Montreal? Now, I'm not saying they can't beat Montreal myself, but I'm saying they may, Tuukka can steal a series.
Yeah.
But they've got to determine that in the boardroom, not, and
not in the moment.
Unfortunately, Claude and the coaching staff gets put in the middle, and that, I mean, there's a story that the year they won the cup, when they were trailing Montreal 3-1, I think, and I might be a little fuzzy, but that coaching staff was fired the next day if they didn't win that series.
Oh yeah.
And it's all, they look at it as a business and they have to.
And
so
another thing about that,
and those guys are good coaches.
Oh yeah,
that's my point. But
Chiarelli has been undergunning them. They don't really have any good players to coach.
Yeah, it's things happen. They've had good players and they've had to buy into Claude's system because he sees what he has. And good coaches, and the high school coaches, we're going to talk about the college coaches, they don't reinvent the wheel, but they say, I've got this kind of player and this kind of player, and I've got a great goaltender. I'm going to build from that out. And in high school's different because you've only got kids for 3 or 4 years, and college guys. But the pros can. All the teams have styles. We've known that. The Edmonton teams that used to be high flying, and they'd get players like that. Montreal, the flying Frenchmen, they'd get guys that could fly. BC does that. They recruit kids that can. They don't have to be the biggest kids, but they fly. So teams get tagged and they succeed with it because that's a coach's philosophy, or that's his comfort level. And Claude's always been the guy that said, if they don't score any goals, they can't beat us. Yeah. And he's gotten guys that have done that. And that's another reason why I'm not making this whole show the Johnny Boychuk show, but that guy would do anything for you. Yeah. And he was a prototypical Bruin. He was a great guy in the room, and why they used him as the guy to
you have
send
so many other tradable players on that roster, and you choose Johnny Boychuk. Walk me through it, Peter.
Well, listen, we're not gonna cure the Bruins' ills tonight, but we congratulate them on a win. Maybe that turns things around.
I hope definitely.
So. Hey, when you have a win like this against one of the best teams in the Western Conference, and we know how loaded that Western Conference is. Chicago, one of the best. Hopefully this is a stretch of a good run. We'll find out. So now we're going to go back to what we know. High school hockey.
Yeah.
Part of My Hockey Live.
Because we're all high school guys.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
We got 2 playing games.
Let's go.
It's going to be played. Franklin, Xaverian, Woburn, and Burlington, which is going to be on My Hockey Live, streaming live. And as you saw, Tom, a Franklin native.
Yeah.
Not feeling good about the Super 8. Do you want to explain why you don't feel comfortable with your high school team in the Super 8?
Xaverian, as I understand it,
You know, we should
understandable.
probably just, I want full bore on this, but we should tell everybody that today is, if they don't know, if they're on My Hockey Live, they probably do know that today is a huge day. Today is selection, it's usually Saturday, but it's selection Sunday this year. And the committee has met, as you guys get to talk to Coach Mike from Hudson, and he did a great job explaining a lot of the backroom stuff that goes on in the meetings. And there's so many kids across the state that are waiting to hear whom they're going to play, when they're going to play, where they land in the seedings, and it all comes from that Super 8. And just like all the kids at Franklin High are saying, well, we had a good year, we had a terrific season, and we've proven we can do this. But then it becomes, do we really want to be in the Super 8 or not at this point, when there are two teams that are as highly regarded as Springfield Cathedral and Malden Catholic this year?
Oh, God.
So, Tom, I'm setting you up for that one.
So, if they
remember, your
beat
buddies are there,
Zavarian,
your buddies and your friends.
If they beat Zavarian, they are the 7th seed, so they would play the 2 seed, which is Malden Catholic. Am I correct?
That is correct. So Zavarian and Franklin play Tuesday night in the early game. The play-in games are Tuesday night. That'll be right here on myhockeylive.com. You can see those games live from Chelmsford, and for a lot of people, it's tough to get there at 5 o'clock on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
So you can watch the games live. Franklin and Zavarian will be the first matchup, and the winner of that will get to meet Malden Catholic in a 2 out of 3 series starting next Sunday.
Where is that 2 out of 3 series, or do we know?
Well,
Where is it usually?
The first round of games, all the 8 teams will play next Sunday at the Songus Arena in Lowell, and they're usually, I didn't see the list, but they are usually at noon, 2, 4, and 6 p.m. So and they've changed, on occasion they've changed the order. They go in 5 and 4, 6 and 3, 7 and 2, and 1 and 8. On occasion, that's how they've done it. So Franklin Zavarian winner would play Malden Catholic in the 3rd game next Sunday, and then they usually go on from there, and 4 of the teams play Tuesday and 4 Wednesday, and that's a 2 out of 3 series. And they kind of, they call audibles along the way, depending on what happens. But to your point, Tuesday, 48 hours from now, Franklin and Zavarian will skate in the 5 o'clock or 5:10 p.m. game, and then a Middlesex League battle between Burlington and Woburn. We heard earlier they have split this year. Burlington had a little bit higher rating percentage-wise, but those two will meet in the nightcap, and the winner gets to play Springfield Cathedral in a 2 out of 3, and the loser then will go into the Division I North and be the number 1 seed in that tournament, like either Franklin or Zavarian will be the number 1 seed in the D1 South.
I don't want any of my friends to take this the wrong way, but please lose. So we get the number 1 seed in D1 South, get the easy ride to the Garden. Please.
You know what? I'm glad that's a great lead in, and I don't want to cut you off, but that is one, out of all the tournaments, there's a bunch of tournaments within the big tournament. There's the Super 8, and then there's D1, 2, and 3, North and South, so there's 6 plus Super 8 is 7, and then there are 2 girls tournaments of big interest as well.
Yep.
And then for some of those tournaments, they go on and play teams from Western Mass and Central Mass to get to the Garden.
Yeah.
So to your point, the D1 South may be one of the most competitive tournaments in years. The teams that are going to be in that, I mean.
So we got Framingham. We have, who we got?
So you get Zavarian or Franklin would be one of the favorites. The other favorite would be Hingham High School.
Hingham.
Who got knocked out of the contention for the Super 8. And this is going to cause some controversy. We've been here the last couple hours, but on the internet, there are people that, some people expected Hingham was going to be in. Their record isn't as good as some other teams, 11-8-1, I think. And people look at that and say, 8 losses, how can that be a Super 8 team? The comeback is Hingham's an independent school. They don't belong to a league in hockey. They play a terrific schedule. At different times this year, they were ranked 4th, 5th, or 6th in strength of schedule. Now again, strength of schedule is part of the equation. It's not everything. Somebody could have the first strength of schedule and be 0-20.
If strength of schedule was part of was everything, Frank would not be in.
Well, it's not everything, but my point is, Hingham surprised some people by not getting past the second vote there. It gets technical, but a lot of people were surprised that they weren't included in the conversation further along. So they fall out of the Super 8 contention right into the Division I South, and they're not seeded second in that because other than the teams that lose in the play-in game, everybody else gets seeded after them by percentage. So Hingham's percentage is going to be further down. And I haven't seen the pairings in D1 South, but you've got Hingham, you've got Zavarian or Franklin, you've got Barnstable, who's in consideration all along, 13-5-1. You've got Braintree, whose record this year isn't as strong, 9-5-6, but they are the defending D1 South.
I'm not big on Braintree.
Braintree's a good team. They're very well, I'm going to say this, they're very well coached. Almost everybody we're bringing up is very well coached. We're so blessed with such a great group of high school coaches. But Dave Fasano did a great job last year getting his team to the Garden, and they lost to Reading. They're in it again, and they just played St. John's Prep, a Super 8 team last week, and it was a 3-1 game. And I wasn't there, but some people said, boy, Braintree's opening my eyes. They'd be a good Middlesex team, for instance. So they're a factor. Framingham, you mentioned, they're one of a couple of surprise teams that could do some damage. I think Framingham, again, 9-6-5, but they played a very good schedule, very well coached.
They upset us last year.
Yeah, and Paul Spear does a great job. And then my other team in surprise in that one is Duxbury. The 12-5-5.
Duxbury.
They didn't make, they weren't in the Super 8 conversation much this year. They made it last year as the 6th seed. A lot of last year at the end was due to, a lot of that, the factoring into that a lot was how they did in the Falmouth tournament at the end of the year, which is a very competitive tournament, and they won it. They beat BC High in the final last year, and that got them into the Super 8. Now, unfortunately, they drew Springfield Cathedral in the Super 8 last year, and they didn't get by 2 games, but they were competitive. They played very well, and Duxbury had a good team last year. Again, John Blake does a great job with those guys. So I like Duxbury and Framingham as maybe surprise teams. Dark horse teams, Braintree and Barnstable, because of whom they played and how they played the whole season. And you just can't look past Hingham and whoever gets the Zavarian or Franklin as the favorites. So very competitive D1 South tournament. Last year the final was Braintree over Barnstable, 5-4. So, that's going to be a great tournament.
How is the D1 North turning?
So D1 North, very good question. Now there are fewer teams. There are more D1 North teams in Super 8 just by geography. So either Woburn or Burlington will end up as the favorite in that. They'll be the number 1 seed after Tuesday night. One of those teams will, and that game's going to overtime, I'll tell you right now, because they're very close.
It's a guarantee here, folks.
Yeah, and Bob Conceition and Jimmy Durant, great coaches. Again, they know each other very well. The Middlesex League is so competitive. It's so deep.
Oh, yeah.
So Woburn or Burlington will be the favorite. And then really, you drop down, and there's so many teams that could be a dark horse. I mean, I looked at the bracket, and I'm not saying every team, but Arlington, Melrose, or St. Mary's. Don't be surprised if one of those teams ends up in the final with either Woburn or Burlington, just the way it falls. St. Mary's, very competitive. They were the number 1 seed in D1 North last year. They lost a lot of guys through graduation. They're very young, but again, very well coached, very competitive. They're playing a freshman goaltender who's a kid out of Peabody who's done a real good job. And if they get on a little bit of a roll, if they win their first game, they've got to play Arlington in the second game. Talk about another good coach, John Missouri, who just craves winning. They beat St. John's last year, 1-0 in the tournament, and moved forward. But another good team out of the Middlesex League now is Arlington. And Melrose in the Middlesex League, Vin Mirasolo, longtime coach at Linfield, does a great job. He's got a great goaltender coach, Ryan Sheehan. So those guys, Arlington, Melrose, and St. Mary's would be my dark horse. And then a surprise team in D1 North is Andover. Very lightly talked about. They're the 4 seed. They're not going to score a lot of goals. They ended up 10-4-6. They play in the same league with Central Catholic and Billerica and Tewksbury, and it's the combination of the old Dual County and Merrimack Valley conference. And Andover has a goaltender named Nick Scarpa, who's, you're going to hear his names, and he can steal some games. They play very low-scoring games. They don't have a lot of good goal scorers. Not bad goal scorers. They just don't. They play a defensive style because that's what they're good at. So they're not going to win games 7-6, but they can steal a game here and there. So Andover may surprise a couple, and there are few teams in D1 South, but again, very competitive bracket there. Reading won it last year they were a 12 seed, and they came in. But another Middlesex team, great coach Mark Doherty. Reading didn't make the tournament this year after winning it last year in the Garden.
Did Wilmington make the tournament?
Wilmington, no.
Oh,
but,
wow.
Wilmington might have. I have to check that. But anyway, my point is on Reading. It's the first time, and they beat Wilmington in the final.
Yep.
And it's the first time in
Epic
30,
shootout.
30 years Reading hasn't made it. So a great run there, and they had some injuries. One of their best players got hurt for a good part of the season. But Coach Doherty, again, very well coached.
So now we have a couple appearances. We got Jimmy
Cameo.
Young, and we got the
Mike
son
McNamara.
right by the father.
That's right. You guys dress
Taking
alike,
care
too.
of
I
me.
love that. I love that.
You can tell they're family.
Joe and Tom, you guys did a great job. Mike, you did a great job in the studio today. We put out a lot of information today. I want to make sure that we thank My Hockey Live and Mark Igo and his group.
Mark does a great job.
They've done so many games this year for high school hockey. More people have probably watched high school hockey in the greater Northeast area than have ever watched before because of MHL's efforts. And another guy I want to throw out and thank too is Pat Serio of Serio Video, Art Egerton, who's been doing all the South Shore games. And I just think that My Hockey Live is here to come. I know that here to stay, and I know that you were a principal in bringing that out here too.
Well, we got going last year. We had, there's a guy that did a lot for high school hockey, a guy named Rick Comfort, who's gotten a lot of things going, and Rick is doing his thing this year, and we decided to do some other things, and it's been a great season. I think we're at 59 or 60 games officially, and once the tournament gets going, we may be out there every night of the tournament. So, our goal was to get to 3 figures this year, triple figures, and, we're going to make a run at it and see what happens. But, it's sort of like we're just scratching the surface in terms of covering high school hockey, and especially in Eastern Mass.
And I think that you guys got a late start to the season. I think now that you've established yourself and the teams know that you're out there and the service that you're providing, I think next year can only be positive.
We hope so.
Yeah. We also want to say that the interviews both ran. We want to make sure that we're going to upload them in their entirety separately from this program as well. So if you only want to watch the Coach Mike N interview and the Rick Middleton interview you did, we'll put those up separately as well on, I'm hoping on the My Hockey Live website. I think that's what we'll probably do. I don't want to dismiss this guy behind you here, the son. Mike, it's been a long time. People don't know this, but I actually train young people to be broadcasters and sportscasters since 2008 when I started at a basement studio in Natick, Massachusetts on Speen Street.
Memories.
Speen Street.
Memories.
But Mike McNamara was in the first 7 people that were there.
He's a true alum.
And another guy by the name of Alex Reamer was also in that group, and he is now writing a column for the Globe. He's now, I think, a junior or senior at BU.
When did one Alex Barth enter the fold?
When he was 16, so that was about 5 years ago. But he was there, and he's now a junior at Ithaca. I'm very proud of all you guys because the skills you're learning there, whether you go into broadcasting or not, are going to help you out. Mike, do you remember anything about those early days at Speen Street that you might want to share with us?
The high chairs.
Just keep that in mind. The high chairs. Do you remember anything in specifically?
I just remember Sundays heading on down to Natick to watch some NFL and talk about it and just have a great time.
With 2 friends of yours. Why don't we give them a plug?
To Derek Spino and John DeBella.
Yeah, 2 of my favorites from the early years as they were at the old Young Broadcasters of America.
YBA.
But now we're here in Marlborough and at the Proactive Business Network, along with the CTR group, the Complete Technology Resources, with Jamie Staffslin and Cricket Paulson. And I just want to thank them for giving us an opportunity to come up down here and do this. And I always say you give young people a chance and they will blow you away with their abilities and their talents. And again, thank you guys all for coming out here.
No problem. It was a pleasure.
So we hope to do this again. And